Guyana's jungle, there are no roads, no backup, no second chances. Just the humidity, the overwhelming heat, the smell of wet earth, and an enemy who watches you long before you can see him. Here, every step could be your last. Here, a sound in the leaves could mean a snake or an armed man. And here, elite gendarmes hunt down illegal gold miners who are organized, armed, and above all, ready to do anything to defend their camp. Today, on StoryCube, we welcome a man who has experienced all of this from the inside. A former groupe d'intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale Commando, Major Franck. He spent years in Guyana, infiltrating the green hell, traveling up black rivers, and surprising garimperos, illegal gold miners, hidden in the middle of miles of jungle. But above all, there was that day, the one when everything changed. A shootout, a bullet that slipped under the vest, a split second separating life from death. Since then, Franck has been in a wheelchair, but he is alive, and tonight he is going to tell us his story. He is going to tell us about his life as an elite police officer, his missions, the moments when everything was at stake, and above all, the recovery that followed. Make yourself comfortable, turn off the lights, and get ready to dive into one of the most dangerous operational zones in the world, where courage is not enough, where every decision matters, and where 23 grams of gold can change a life forever. Welcome to StoryCube.
We've already been on interventions where guys stabbed someone for 10 euros at an automated teller machine. Actually, we decided to get into the stream using our bag as a float. Actually, we drifted for several hours in the river so we could reach the middle of the water discreetly. After a while, we came across a spot where they were unloading with a canoe. He ambushed me. He came out facing me because I knew he was going to shoot, you know? I saw it in his eyes and knew he'd shoot. I was sure I would die too.
Hello everyone, welcome to StoryCube. Today we're hosting a former groupe d'intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale Commando. Maybe you've already wondered what elite gendarmes really experience during missions. How do you find illegal gold miners deep in the world's most hostile jungle? Today, we'll discuss infiltration missions in French Guiana, garimperos, who follow no faith or law, and the moment when everything in his life changed instantly. Major Franck Robin, welcome to StoryCube, nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Maybe just before we get into your story and your absolutely incredible journey, it might be cool to know, well, who you are quickly. In a few words, what exactly were you doing at that time?
Well, I was, as you said, I was a gendarme at the intervention group of the Guyana Gendarmerie, which is the intervention group of the Guyana Gendarmerie, which has now become a groupe d'intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale branch. Our job mainly was to track down the garimperos. So garimperos are illegal gold miners. So why garimperos? Because in Brazilian it means prospectors, so that's why we call them garimperos. So these are people who mainly come from Brazil and Suriname to illegally mine gold that's in the ground in Guyana. The particular thing about Guyana is that it's a region with a lot of gold. 90% of the territory is Amazon rainforest, it's jungle. So as an intervention unit, we handled the intervention side at the judicial center. We're trained by the groupe d'intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale for that. That's all people know about it. We target armed robbers due to frequent robberies and holdups, as well as drug dealers and activities related to pimping. Basically, it's at 6 in the morning, you have an assault team, you break down the door and catch the guys at their place. So that's for the part that benefits the judicial police. So that was about 200, a little more than 200 missions per year. And then we had the equatorial forest part where we were tracking down gold miners, and that really takes place in the middle of the jungle. We conducted joint missions with the military or legionnaires, as described in my book, focusing on tasks unique to my unit. Infiltration missions aimed at apprehending the criminals we were looking for in the middle of the forest. These are really unusual missions. There are a lot of methods of operation, and we're the only ones who master them, the only ones who carry them out. That's why we only worked among ourselves and not with the support of the military.
Incredible. We're obviously going to talk about this book, and I thought it would be really interesting to go back a bit chronologically over your journey. And actually, I think that's something you do in the book as well, if I'm not mistaken. You really go back over your whole story, the most important missions you've accomplished.
Exactly, yeah.
The book is titled 23 grams of gold for 23 grams of gold.
For 23 grams of gold, yeah?
We'll return to that later in the video to discuss the title's meaning, if that's all right. But first, let's go back to your baptism by fire. How did things begin for you? What were some of the first missions, the first things you did, even before it all started?
Well, for me, as I talk about in my book, I explain a little bit. It's my story. So the purpose of the book was really to shed light on the missions we carry out in French Guiana, the missions with my unit, the groupe d'intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale branch, because they're not well known, they've never been told. So the goal was really to bring them to light, and I use my own story to tell all of that. So I start from my childhood, how I joined the gendarmerie, what led me to join French Guiana, and then I explain different missions that are a little unusual. In 2008, I was fortunate to be approved for the first groupe d'intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale overseas training course, as they wanted to strengthen the units. Now it's a mandatory course. Everyone who goes to a groupe d'intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale branch, whether it's in mainland France or overseas, they have to take this course. In 2008, we were actually the first to do it. In the gendarmerie, everyone is trained in intervention. I was even an instructor, but that's for professional intervention. It's for all gendarmes, psychologists and brigade officers. So everyone can intervene safely, protecting themselves and the person being apprehended. That's what we call professional intervention, using all methods and techniques. This applies at the high end of intervention for terrorism or cases where people are armed or likely armed. That's when we move into specialized intervention. Okay, so here it's really the Groupe d'Intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale that trains us. It's not a lot, it's a small group. The Groupe d'Intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale, all units combined, is about 1,000 people. So out of a population of gendarmes where there are about 120,000, that's barely 1%.
Okay, yeah.
So there you go, we're trained for specialized intervention. I was fortunate to be trained before leaving for Guyana, which allowed me to go, so I asked.
What kind of things do you learn, the stuff?
The training covers all aspects of specialized intervention, including specific methods to apprehend someone in a house, open area, vehicle, or on the street. There are really techniques and methods of action that are specific. There's a lot of shooting as well, a lot of toughening up. Obviously, these are courses that last more than 2 months. We don't spend hours in the office. If you want, it's morning, noon, and night, and especially at night. The course is physically tough, but very educational. Afterwards, we can work much more safely, especially since we do a lot of shooting and handle our weapons better than most gendarmes. Obviously, for us, it really becomes our weapon. It's an extension of our arm, actually. It's really us. It's a tool. Then, you see, of course, we always operate within the French legal framework, always. That's normal, you know. And then I asked, so I went to Guyana. I mentioned Guyana first, since it's the French department with the most operational activity. As I said, we support investigators on the judicial police side. They'll tell us in the investigation, they'll spot someone, we call that a target. So a guy we need to apprehend at a certain place. It could be at his home, it could be in the middle of the jungle, it could be anywhere in Guyana.
Oh, it's a name, you call it a target then? Yeah, we call it a target, yeah.
Yeah, we call it a target, yeah. And actually, as soon as this individual is armed or likely to be armed, has already used their weapon, or is even just likely to be armed, the investigators call in a specialized intervention unit. So in Guyana, we were the only ones and were called in by both police and investigators, not just the investigating officer. And we carried out interventions because in Guyana, the specific feature of this overseas territory is that it's a department located on a continent compared to the other overseas territories, which are on islands. Guyana is really located. It's a little piece of France truly lost in the middle of South America, between Brazil on one side and Suriname on the other. And to give you an idea about crime rates in France, there are about 1 to 1.5 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants. In Guyana, it's 15 times higher. It's the department with the highest crime rate. So we really had a major commitment. As I was saying earlier, 90% of this department is Amazon rainforest, it's jungle, it's primary forest. So as a result, there's a huge amount of gold underground. Some legal companies mine this gold, act fairly responsibly toward the environment, and pay taxes to France. Of course, there are people who come to exploit it illegally. And all these people, all those who mine this gold illegally, they mainly come from Brazil and Suriname. Since the borders are just rivers, they cross, and 10 minutes later they're...
They're what?
Surinamese, who come from Suriname.
What is it, borders? What did you say they are?
Rivers.
Oh, rivers.
Yeah, that's it. So some of them are rivers, but a river in Guyana, if you want, is like a river in France, but we're not talking about the same scale at all. It's not the same thing. So they cross. Most of the time it's done at night. The convoys pass through at night, and then they move through the middle of the forest to reach the sites. So sometimes it takes them several days to reach an illegal site.
Before we get to maybe your first missions, had you already done other missions before that, or...?
When I was a mobile gendarme, actually, as a mobile gendarme, it's the equivalent of the compagnies républicaines de sécurité. People know them now, but we know them well from demonstrations and all that. Back then, we did many overseas missions, so I went to New Caledonia, Réunion, and Ivory Coast with my squadron. Since I had various instructor qualifications, I was often assigned to train at Saint-Astier, but I wanted more operational involvement. That's why I went overseas, because there, you're operating at a higher level of intervention.
What does it look like when you arrive? Is it as expected? Are there more people than you thought? How do you feel?
In Guyana, along the ocean, you have the whole coastline, that's what they call it, and that's where all the populations are concentrated. There are several towns, starting from the Brazilian side, you have Saint-Georges-de-l'Oyapock, then there's the road that goes through different villages and small towns. Let's say you have Regina, then you have Cayenne, which is the capital, the main city, and above that you have Kourou, which is known for the space center. Then further up you have Saint-Laurent-du-Maroni, which is at the very top. And there, it's the border with Suriname, so there's a road that goes all the way through, actually just one road. For example, driving from Cayenne to Saint-Laurent takes 3 hours, and from Cayenne to Saint-Georges-de-l'Oyapock also takes about 3 hours, so crossing takes nearly 6 hours on a single road. And you travel this road by day or even more at night. For an hour, you might not see anyone except monkeys or little animals crossing the road, that's all. It's pretty isolated, but in terms of population, there's a big melting pot and there are a lot of undocumented people. Of course, because it's very easy to get to France, you just have to cross the river. There are the Amerindians, but the Amerindians aren't really here. They mostly live in the forest. And then you have a lot of Brazilians, a lot of Surinamese as well, who come from Suriname. And there's a huge Chinese population. The Chinese actually run all the shops. And then there's a group called the Hmong. The Hmong are an ethnic group from Laos who were driven out of Laos. And actually they live in a village called Cacao, about an hour's drive from Cayenne. They first arrived in this village, Cacao, I don't know exactly when, but it was several decades ago, and back then it was just forest. Actually, they cleared everything, they started farming, and they're the ones who supply all the fruits and vegetables for Guyana. So it's a really, really resilient community. There's a big mix of populations, and in the end, everyone is more or less Guyanese. Many people also come from mainland France. As I said, there is crime and some insecurity, but only in certain neighborhoods in Cayenne or Kourou. It's similar to mainland France. There are neighborhoods in big cities where you shouldn't really go at night, you know. It's the same in Guyana, just like in all the overseas territories. There's a lot of drugs, so there's a lot of crack. And it's true that people on crack, they can lose control easily. So when they're hanging around in Cayenne, you have to be careful. We've already had to step in when someone was stabbed over 10 euros at an automated teller machine, you know.
Do you remember your first intervention over there, the one that really stayed with you?
Well, actually, the ones that really stood out to me were the missions in the forest, because those are unusual. They really leave a mark. I talk about a few of them in my book. And then there are the missions, like I said, the judicial police ones, so supporting the investigators. I mentioned it in my book, but it became such a routine that I don't recall specific missions. Honestly, none stood out to me. When you work, I was a team leader as well, so my boss would give me the objective, where it was, who we needed to apprehend, and I was the one who decided on the tactics and everything, and each role, the role of each team member.
How does it work when you get an order like that? Do you just get a target and have to...
Well, you get the guy's profile. Okay, so depending on what he did, if he's known, if he's already been arrested, all that, the friends he might have in the context, the whole general situation actually, then the specific situation really, where he is, what it's like, how it's set up, you see the place, what it's like, if we manage to locate him, or if really, we can't pinpoint these people since they move between Brazil and Suriname, so we rely on intelligence. We know he'll pass a certain place at a specific time, so we catch him there by setting up the operation. When we intervene like this, it's a deliberate assault. We decide when to act. We set up an initial order and a tactic to safely apprehend him, planning for different scenarios just in case. So, we try to anticipate all the possible scenarios based on our experience, based on our expertise.
What are some of the scenarios? Like, if suddenly he has a weapon, are you just going to stand there like that?
Well, I don't know. For example, you end up in a house, you expect that the guy, we intervene at 6 in the morning according to the legal framework. At 6 in the morning, you expect the guy to be sleeping in his room. You could very well have a scenario where as soon as you arrive, the guy is in his garden. The main entrance door, we can break it down with a battering ram, explosives, ceramic, whatever. If opening it is too hard, we can enter through another way, like a window or another door. When we enter, the first team of 3 usually has a shield and goes straight to the bedroom to grab the guy. But if, when they arrive, for example, the guy, well, he had an argument with his wife, he's on his couch, they have to arrest him right away as they pass by. Actually, there are all these scenarios, there are different ones.
You think ahead, that's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So you really have to think ahead. The goal is to work safely. We're going to control almost every scenario. And the guys we work with, the team members, they're used to it. The trio goes in, their role is to go into the room, I don't know, maybe the third door at the end of the hallway. And when they go in, they see the guy. They're not going to rush into the room, actually. They're going to call out to the guy. The pairs behind will handle the room if you want. Since it's a drill, everyone knows their role and it just flows naturally. We plan our tactical layout and initial order, but ultimately the situation always determines our actions. We plan things ahead of time, but if the situation means we have to adapt, we actually change orders during the action. That's what's interesting.
How many of you are there like that during an intervention?
An assault group is about 12 guys. 12 guys, and then we also have people outside securing the perimeter, okay? Securing the area to keep it safe. Because when we intervene, we don't know. In a housing project, for example, some guys and their friends might show up to cause trouble or get involved.
Has that ever happened to you once, when you intervened?
Yeah, but often when we intervene in the morning, actually, and then the guy, we catch him, we're dealing with a big shot. The moment you arrive, the guy is so surprised that some of them even pee themselves, you know? But on the other hand, once he's in front of the investigator, half an hour later, he finds his voice again. You see, he'll yell in front of the investigator, but half an hour before, you know, he wasn't acting tough when he got hit with a shield in his bed.
Yeah, that's clear, that's clear.
That's usually the case. We just turn him over to the investigators who handle the interviews and investigation.
Are you on site when you intervene as the chief, like that?
Yeah, of course. I'm in the assault column. I'm often behind the second team, that's it.
Who are the people there? 3 have shields, but what about the rest?
Everyone has a role. For example, the shield unit usually has 3 members, with 1 in front holding a large shield. At the Bataclan, for example, they showed a large shield. The Brigade de Recherche et d'Intervention uses a smaller, more manageable shield. Usually 3 of them have a shoulder weapon. Then you have a pair behind them who are heavily equipped with armored helmets and everything, but they don't necessarily have shields. And then you also have a breaching team, called the breaching team. They're the ones in charge of opening the door, so there are different methods. They'll either use a precise opening technique or break it down with a battering ram and ceramic shotgun cartridges that explode. explosives can be used, but in Guyana we rarely saw armored doors and never used them. Doors were usually wooden. In mainland France, though, they used explosives. So there are different methods for opening doors. After that, once it's done, the team goes in and does its job. Everyone is apprehended. Our targets, but also the family and everyone else. So everyone is apprehended, and then we sort things out afterwards. Initially, we always had a doctor and a nurse with us, but they stayed behind and weren't part of the assault team. If there's an injury, whether from weapons or other causes, they can assist us or the apprehended person. And often, actually, they would intervene because the family, often you had the mother or the father who would faint. They were more helpful to families, since when apprehending someone, even if he's a jerk, the family might be unaware.
Well, yeah, of course.
It's not necessarily a...
Have you ever had cases like that where you do the intervention and they defend themselves right away in the morning? I don't know, they have a gun under the bed or things like that?
We intervene so quickly that they rarely have time to use anything, even though many keep weapons near their beds. They just don't have time because we arrive so fast. It's really, you have to create a real shock effect, if you will. So once the door is open, it all happens in a very short time. On the other hand, when we work in open environments, meaning in the street or in a store and so on, we're not dressed as police officers, obviously, we're in plain clothes. And in that case, it really has to go super fast because the person is often on guard and there are people around, so you really have to do it even more quickly.
Why does it take a few seconds actually before...
Yeah, it's just a split second. It happens really fast.
There's one of the first chapters you talk about in the book called Facing the Crazy Canoes. I can't remember, well...
De Sossonel?
De Sossonel, okay.
Yeah, Sossonel. It's a place in Guyana, because actually, in Guyana, on the rivers, every time there are kind of small dams, little waterfalls, you see? Because there are a lot of stones, a lot of rocks at the bottom of the rivers, and between the dry season and the rainy season, or even with the tide, the river level can vary by 3 to 5 meters, you see? But really, in just one night, the water can rise by 2 meters during the dry season. For example, there are places where there are a lot of stones, where there are really specific passages you have to take. Because otherwise, if you go through another spot and there's a rock just under the water that you can't see, because the water over there isn't blue, it's super dark. You put your hand in up to here, you see, and you can't see your fingers.
Oh yeah, damn.
There could be a rock below that could break your engine, so you have to use the same route. We call these waterfalls sots. There are many, like the Manin. I think there are about 100 sots. There are rocks and boulders everywhere, so only certain passages exist. The Surinamese and Amerindians who live by the river know these routes well and navigate them easily in both dry and wet seasons. They always go through the same spot to be sure, even if there's 2 or 3 meters more water, but they always go through the same place actually, because that's their habit.
That's interesting. Have you ever visited those places?
We go to those places all the time, and the difficulty for us is that the boatmen, whether they're Amerindians, Surinamese or Brazilians, they were born in one place. They know the river by heart, but only in that area, but they don't necessarily know all the rivers. And for us, since we work all over French Guiana, we're supposed to know pretty much everything, so it's impossible to know all the routes. There are times, it's true, when we've had engine breakdowns because you go along and then bam, you hit a rock in the water and you break your engine, so...
There's a part a bit later called Unexpected Catch at Camopi. What happens there? Is it a special mission? Is it a...
Yeah, so to go back to the first one, about the FOC canoe from Sossonel, actually it was a mission where there's a dam actually. It was built by the engineers and the military. Actually across the river there's a dam that was built, so it's barbed wire with barrels and everything, it's basic. But actually it's to prevent canoes from going up because at that spot it's close to Suriname. At night, convoys of illegal canoes transport equipment and immigrants. When returning, they bring back gold and supplies for illegal sites. They built a dam to block passage. At night, people usually stop 2 or 3 kilometers before, unload goods, go through the forest and reload onto canoes further up, adapting as needed. So we carry out checks all around. The military does that too. All the bypass routes, so there are quads and all that. So after that, it's mostly the mobile gendarmes or the military who handle it. And actually, we got involved because it's far. It's about an hour by helicopter from Cayenne, so we got involved because it happened at night. There were convoys of 5 or 6 canoes passing through, forcing their way past the dam. Often, one empty canoe goes first. These canoes have big engines, 200 to 225 horsepower, so the front, called the banana, sits about 3 meters above the water. If you want, it's like doing a wheelie, you see? And actually, it comes up to the dam, smashes everything, breaks the dam, and then you have the canoes loaded with equipment coming through. There are 4 or 5 tons of goods with Brazilians and illegal immigrants on board, who then supply numerous illegal sites further upstream.
I can't picture it.
A pirogue is a boat like the ones you might imagine, but these are much longer, they're wide. You can load 3 or 4 tons of goods. They're made of wood, so they force their way through the barrier, and as a result, we're always called in for backup, because we know that once they've delivered the goods, they'll head back down. And when they're coming back empty, they'll go much faster, and often, when they're coming back empty, they're carrying gold. There are also the site bosses who will be heading back down, so it's a pretty sensitive situation. And often, during these arrests, there's a lot of use of weapons because people don't let themselves get caught at all, you see?
Do they also have weapons on them?
Yeah, of course, they always have weapons, because actually, to explain it, on a site, an illegal site, there are the garimperos, the prospectors, the workers. Actually, they're people who mainly come from Brazil, from pretty poor provinces, and they come to French Guiana to look for gold, to make a bit of money, and they're really the workers. They work on work sites where they extract the gold, and nearby they create living areas, so about 30 minutes to an hour's walk from the work site. The living areas are concealed under the forest, making them invisible from helicopters or aerial views. They live in jungle villages in huts called karmets. They're tree trunks with tarps used as roofs and walls, and they live in there.
Camouflaged like that?
Yeah, that's it. So they live in there. And the problem with these villages on these sites is that there are the garimperos. They know they're extracting gold illegally. And they also use mercury because it has the ability to attract gold when they clean it. So it obviously pollutes the soil a lot. At their work sites, they clear all trees and pump water, creating lots of mud. The soil then stays sterile for decades with nothing growing back, making it an ecological disaster. And in these living areas, the problem is a lot of prostitution and drugs. When they go to extract gold, actually, there's a boss who buys all their supplies, so the engines to extract the gold, the fuel, everything, it's very expensive. A liter of fuel in the forest, depending on the season, with the current price of gold, it can be worth 30 euros. But in the forest, actually, there are no exchanges in euros or dollars, everything is done in gold. So, you see, when you find shops, there's a small scale, and actually, it can be a gram of gold or a fraction of a gram of gold, actually, and everything is weighed in gold, and the goods are paid for in gold on the spot.
A site boss, just so I understand, is the guy who runs the site.
Exactly. So he runs the site and then he hires garimperos, workers. So the workers, they are exploited. So the gold is extracted. 70% of the gold goes to the boss because he pays for everything. And 30% is divided among the garimperos, among the workers. So these people don't make a lot of money. And then on weekends, since they party a lot. So on site, in the middle of the forest, in the middle of these villages, you'll find places called core hotels. So if you want, there are living areas scattered throughout the forest, and in the middle of these living areas, near the waterways, it's always near the waterways to be supplied with goods and with canoes. You'll find a larger area called a core hotel, so it's kind of like the supermarket and all the different living areas around it. So ideally, they'll walk 2 or 3 hours to come get food, buy goods, buy food, buy all the beauty products, all the household products, basically everything they need for everything. And it also serves as a bar and a nightclub. So everything runs on generators in the forest. There's no electricity. So you'll find flat screens, speakers, sound systems, freezers, refrigerators.
It's illegal, there's not really...
It's brought in illegally, all of it, of course. So in the middle of these sites, there are a lot of girls and prostitutes. And there's a huge amount of drugs, so that leads to a lot of crime. And there are also a lot of score settlings. The problem is that on these sites, often the bosses, since there are some, make a lot of money. Like there are sites where they can extract several kilos per week or per month. With gold prices now, 1 gram is about 100 euros. So when they have 10 kilos, you can see how fast that adds up. In Guyana, several tons are estimated to be extracted illegally each year. It goes to the gold trading posts in Suriname, since everything ends up there to be resold, mostly by Chinese-run shops.
What are gold trading posts for those who don't know?
Well, actually, the gold trading posts in Suriname are businesses where people come to sell their gold. Yeah, it's a shop that buys gold. So it's gold that comes from the sites because it's not traceable. It comes from sites in Guyana. At gold's current price, that's 500 million to 1 billion euros leaving illegally. The potential is enormous. Many Brazilian gangs called factions are involved. These factions originated in Brazilian prisons in the 1970s and are ultra-violent, even more so than gangs like the DZ Mafia. We're in South America here, so these are really cartels. They come into the forest. Most of the time they kill the site bosses, and then they exploit that gold. Earlier, I mentioned that Guyana has 15 times more homicides than mainland France. The gangs here come from Amapá, a Brazilian state bordering Guyana and France, where the homicide rate is 50 times higher. So if you want, people there don't have the same legal framework as us at all, the same sense of values, all that as we do. So our role is to enforce French laws on a territory in South America. We're dealing with people who don't share our views. Now, back to Sosonel. So the canoes, we knew they had forced the blockade, so we knew they would come back down. When they did, we actually set up an ambush to catch them. In the book, I explained that I fired at the engine with my sniper rifle to stop them. In the end, we saw them, but it was pretty intense. We either catch them at a blockade where they slow down, or we intervene. I discussed this in my book in another mission where we intervened, similar to a go-fast operation. Everything happens at night. You have to picture it on waterways that are pretty narrow, with rocks everywhere, like I said.
How do you see at night? Do you use special goggles?
Yeah, we have friction goggles, IELs, UCIS. You can see a little better, but not like daylight, just slightly more. It slightly distorts distances. When we spot canoes from afar, we put them on and go hunting. Once we're seen, we remove the IELs and turn on the lights, since they know we're there, making it more like a quick operation. We also have a canoe and a big engine, because when we seize a canoe, we take its engine and later use it. The court returns it to us for use. Actually, all the equipment we had is equipment we seized during missions, and then we use it afterwards. The court gives it back to us. Our canoe, our gendarmerie canoe, we use it to make contact, so we give warnings with it. Often we work with a second canoe where we have shooters supporting us. We also often work with a jet ski. We have jet skis supporting us as well. And actually, when we arrive, the goal is to make contact with the canoe. You have to imagine it's at 80 kilometers per hour at night on very narrow waterways. The guy, of course, isn't going to just let it happen. There are 4 of us in the canoe, the canoeist, the guy in front with fire support, and 2 police officers. Only my unit is involved. We don't work with anyone else. 2 guys from my canoe are jumping into the other canoe to catch the canoeist and others inside. It's usually intense, especially when they realize they've been caught. On top of that, they rush toward the shore and then they throw themselves completely onto the bank. Actually, the canoe goes into the forest for about 10 meters, you see.
Do those who jumped onto the canoe still survive despite everything?
Yes, because actually it's really a technique that the goal is really to make contact, and it's done. The canoeist, once he makes contact, gives the order to jump, so jump. Actually, the guys jump right away, but really you shouldn't overthink it because it can happen in a split second actually. The opposing canoe can just make a quick move with the paddle and take off again, so the canoeist has a crucial role. He's the one giving the orders, and the guys in the middle, they don't have the option to mess up. You see, they really have to. We practice it in training, so that's it.
What happens if they jump and can't make it? You said they'd fall in the water, so do you.
They fall in the water. If they fall in the water, we have a bulletproof vest with positive buoyancy, that's what we call it. So it floats. The problem is that when they fall, they can get knocked out. When the canoe with engines arrives, we can run them over, cutting them in half. Also, as I said, they have many weapons, so the person providing cover up front must always watch to prevent anyone from pulling a weapon. After, when they jump into the canoe itself is filled with goods and everything. So you have to imagine it's not like a police boat. So when you arrive, by the time they jump into the canoe, from the moment there are barrels, I've experienced this, there are illegal immigrants there, but they're mainly garimperos. They're scared and don't have much to be blamed for. We should focus on catching the canoe operators. And the boss of the site, if he's there, on a mission that I'm also talking about where we intervened, as I'm walking in the canoe, I hear a noise and everything. And actually there were 3 pigs tied up that were going to be used as food at a site, you see? Actually, you find everything in a canoe, you know? You have fuel too, a lot of fuel. You'll find small vials of mercury. You'll find a lot of rice or coac. So coac is cassava flour, red beans, basically all the Brazilian food, packs of soda cans, bottles of whiskey, bottles of rum. Basically, you find everything. I find speakers. If one's broken, they send a new one. You find anything on a canoe?
This might be a really stupid question, but why don't you intervene directly at the site and instead do it on the river upstream?
When you intervene at the site, first you need to know where the site is. You have to spot it upstream, and then the problem is when you intervene at the site, by the time, often when we arrive by helicopter, they hear the helicopters, they have time to hide the equipment, and then they also hide a lot of it around the area. It's easy to hide something in the forest. It's so dense that after walking just 2 meters and turning around, you can't tell where you started. It's extremely dense, so it's very easy to hide things, to conceal something. One day it happened to me to be on a site, to walk by, and actually I smelled something, a smell of gasoline, you know? So I knew there was something because Brazilian gasoline has a particular smell compared to ours. So after a while, you get used to it with experience. You start noticing traces. And actually, I look around, and actually there was a quad that was hidden, and a quad is pretty big, you know? It was hidden a bit. It was like from here to the camera, you know, it was 2 or 3 meters away, actually. It was hidden. It was so dense that I couldn't see it. I really had to get close, and with the smell, I found it. Actually, I moved some of the branches that were around, and I saw the quad. So it's really super easy to hide things. It's better to catch them before it happens rather than...
I thought that was a stupid question, but it's interesting to know what's really at stake. Also, when you mentioned setting up an ambush, I assumed you meant a full-on one on the ground. But actually, no, you're also on a boat, actually.
Yes, often we're on a boat. We wait for the convoy to pass, and when it does, we go after it. That's it.
There's a chapter called Unexpected Catch at Camopi. So is that another mission then, or what is it?
Yeah, that's another mission. So Camopi, people know a little about it. I think it's really a village there. It's on the Brazilian side.
Is it a gold miners camp or what?
No, Camopi is a village of Amerindians. So there are schools and everything. There are also mobile gendarmes who are assigned there. Yes, when they arrive, they stay there for 3 months. 3 months among the Amerindians, I can tell you, that really changes you. You come back with a different perspective, you see? You're lost in the middle of France for 3 months because you're in the middle of nowhere. Camopi is really in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
You can only reach it by helicopter, otherwise it takes hours by canoe. In the dry season, you sometimes can't get there at all. And actually, the mobile gendarmes, we're going to train them, us with the unit. Every 3 months, actually, there are 2 guys from my unit who go to train the mobile gendarmes on site to the specifics of this place, because around it, there are also a lot of illegal sites. So one day, I went there, and the mobile gendarmes arrived 2 days later. So actually, with the buddies I was with, we decided to go do a little reconnaissance to catch them. We had gotten some intel from because there's a brigade on site as well. They told us they had information that there was some pirogue traffic. I got dropped off very early in the morning before sunrise. So as not to, because there are a lot of lookouts in the forest. In the forest, there are lookouts everywhere. The guys, they have radios. And as soon as we pass by, they'll say, okay, there are gendarmes or soldiers who just passed by. You can be sure that further up, at the illegal sites, further up, they know we're there and they're going to hide everything.
These are people who share information immediately when they notice something.
Yes, exactly. We had infiltrated and caught a canoe dropping off equipment. It was funny because the forest was so dense we couldn't move through it. Actually, we had decided to get into the water with our bag as a float, and actually we let ourselves drift for several hours in the river. That's how we managed to arrive in the middle of the water discreetly. After a while, we came across a place where they were unloading with a canoe that wasn't expecting to see us. Because we arrived in the middle of the water, so we saw them. We got out of the river, of course, and we infiltrated into the jungle, and that's where we caught them.
When you do that, do you report to a command center about the location or just go straight in?
The problem is that in the forest, communication is very difficult, so you use satellite phones. I'm telling you, this happened in 2000, about 15 years ago, and it doesn't make me feel younger. Now there's Starlink and Elon Musk's phones. Actually, now they have that in the forest, they have antennas, so communication is much easier, but on the other hand, the Brazilians have it too.
They definitely have it too.
They have it, so they communicate much more easily. Before, we only had the radio, what we call blue, so it's high-frequency radios where on each illegal site they have a radio. But let's say on the pirogues, for example, once it leaves, between the moment it leaves and the moment it arrives, before they didn't have a radio, but now on the pirogues, they have a Starlink antenna and cell phones with Facebook and Instagram, even in the forest.
That's wild. When you infiltrate and see that place, do you intervene or do something else?
Yeah, we apprehend them. It was a pirogue where there were just 2 of them. They were really just being dropped off on that mission. Yeah, there are missions where there are a lot more of them, but on this mission there were just 2, so we infiltrated and we caught them. Because when they saw us coming, one of them ran straight into the forest, so we apprehended him. And the second one, actually, with his engine, the boatman, he tried to reverse to escape. Because we came from above, so he saw us. So I jumped on the boatman, you see. And the guy, you see, he had a gun. They're almost always armed, actually.
He didn't have time to shoot?
No, he didn't have time.
And the one who ran away, did you manage to catch him in the end?
Yeah. After a while, he leaves. The problem is, in the forest, if you don't catch them right away, it's so dense that it's over, you know.
You have a split second to catch him, or he'll be gone?
If it's garimpeiros, us people, you know, when we arrive at the sites, there are a lot of illegals. There are sites at the moment with 200 illegals, 200 garimpeiros. Actually, these people, they're not allowed to be there. They work, they extract gold illegally, but we can't bring them back to Cayenne. The only thing they're accused of is being foreigners in an irregular situation. You see, they're illegals, but there's not much else. What we're interested in apprehending are the site bosses and also the boatmen, because for them, it's aiding illegal stays, and then, of course, anything related to pimping. And if we ever come across gang leaders or faction leaders, it's the same thing. For us, these were really missions specific to us, to my unit. Our goal was really to apprehend these people. Working with the military there, our goal was to destroy the sites, so we would destroy everything upon arrival. We're supposed to seize equipment for the justice system. The problem is when you get to the forest, you can't seize and bring back everything. Sometimes you have engines that weigh several hundred kilos, you have shelters, you have all that. We arrive by helicopter, and with a helicopter you can't transport that, it's just not possible. We're authorized to destroy everything on site to stop the offense, and the Brazilians leave as they came. However, they've often hidden equipment around. They rebuild the site, and if you return in 2 weeks, it's done. It's never ending, but necessary.
What is it? I was wondering, what's the typical profile of a boss, a site manager, for example?
Identify main points, remove repetition, keep all proper names and details, preserve speaker's viewpoint, condense sentences for clarity. Some are veterans, like former Brazilians who've spent months in the forest, but the faction members we're interested in are extremely young. They have a limited life expectancy, if you will, in their gang, so it's 20 to 30 years at most. And they're extremely violent, and they don't have the same relationship to life as we do at all. They know their lives are short, so they're very violent. We often found bodies in the forest from their conflicts. We don't know how they died. We'd sometimes find crosses at sites showing someone had died. We don't know if it was from malaria, an accident, or being shot. After that, investigators and a forensic doctor return to investigate. But if you see a body, you stop scouting because you don't really know what's happening. In my book, I describe a mission where we found 2 bodies and joined the forensic doctor and investigator at the scene. They determined the man had died. They had been shot, the guy died instantly, you see, and the woman, actually, they saw that she had been shot the same way. She took a bullet to the head and a piece of her jaw was torn off. It's a bit gruesome, I'm sorry. And actually, she managed to crawl until she died next to her guy. Well, her guy, we assume it was her guy. The medical examiner, they took a piece of bone so they could identify them, and we buried them right there. You know, we dug a hole and buried them on the spot.
Because you can't bring the bodies back?
No, you can't. Often there's no family, nothing. We have global positioning system coordinates if needed, but that's it.
Are you still able to identify who the person is, or not necessarily, or sometimes...
The issue is they're often Brazilians, so they need to be known. Also, it's not my job, that was for the investigators.
Yeah, of course, I was just asking in case. I'm coming back to this idea of a typical boss. I find it really interesting. But then, if they're young, how is it that they so quickly have the power, so to speak, to run a...
Well, factions are like the mafia. It's very structured. They really have gang leaders and all that. So after that, how it works, I don't know how it works between them.
Yeah, of course.
But then there are different branches. There's the logistics branch, so those who supply the equipment, the drugs, all that. You have those who are in charge of settling scores, the armed wing. You even have that within the factions. You even have people now who just pay to be part of this faction. They don't have a specific role, but actually they pay. I don't know the entry fee, but it's very expensive, you know? And actually it's to be able to be part of this faction and have some kind of protection.
That's it, it's for protection. It's wild.
Yeah, it's a super mafia-like system. And obviously when you see the financial windfall from gold in Guyana, well, that's kind of the problem. Our role, again, was to apprehend these people.
We're at the chapter about a nighttime raid in the Green Hell.
Yeah, so that was a mission I put together, and on top of that, I had a rant, but I really put this mission together from A to Z myself.
What do you mean by put it together?
I was the one who initiated it, actually. I was the one who started it, who prepared everything. I didn't know exactly, I knew that in the area, in a geographic zone of Guyana, near a river called the Bunamis. I knew illegal sites existed, but not their exact locations. I used satellite images to find a deforested area where a helicopter might land safely. But when you arrive, you only have the satellite view and can't be sure about the actual vegetation. So can the helicopter land or not? We reached the landing area and the helicopter dropped me off. It was supposed to return and pick up 4 others from my unit who flew into Maripasula. The round trip takes about an hour each way. The helicopter couldn't fit all 8 people, so some arrived by plane in Maripasula, and the helicopter was going to pick them up to speed things up. And actually, so he dropped us off in the middle of the afternoon, about 4 of us, so he drops us off. We keep a low profile, you know, because you never know what's around, because the garimperos, they're everywhere. That's the problem in the middle of the forest. They're everywhere, you know, and they see you, but you don't see them. And the helicopter goes to pick up the others and is supposed to bring them back to us. The problem is, when it went back to Maripasula, it got caught in a crazy storm. Because in Guyana, the problem is that the weather changes very quickly, so actually, it couldn't take off again from Maripasula. It was a Friday night, so he decided to spend the night there and come drop them off to us on Saturday morning. So for us, the first night, there were 4 of us, so by late afternoon, night falls pretty quickly in the forest. At 5:30 or 6 o'clock, it's dark. So once it's dark, you know, we start moving forward to go find a safe place in the middle of the forest and then see if we can find anything. And actually, we see a quad go by, so we watch, we observe, and then we see that there's a trail. And actually, half an hour, 30 minutes to an hour after the quad, it comes back the other way, you know, it comes back the other way. Okay, that's cool. And we hear the quad a little farther away. Because in the forest, there's noise, but everything echoes, so we hear the quad stop. So we think, damn, that's good, there are things not far away, so we sneak in, you know, there are 4 of us in the middle of the night, we sneak in, we've got the ILs, we're scouting.
So you don't have to wait for the rest of the group?
We're just doing a recon, that's all.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, we're doing a recon to see exactly what's there, and so we spot a lookout. Often we see a guy with a radio near the fire, so we go around him to avoid being noticed. We arrive, spot the site, and notice several cabins, Brazilians and ATVs, realizing it's a village. We do that, spend several hours, return to hide where we left the bags around 3 or 4 in the morning and wait for the others to arrive the next morning. So there, same thing, I go to check again, they come back all day, we keep a low profile. I decide to move into the places we spotted in the evening, so around 8 or 9 p.m. to apprehend everyone. So we have a group in charge of the lookout. You see, they're going to take care of the lookout so they don't raise the alarm.
It's those people who could have alerted others?
Exactly. So we decided to split into 2 groups since the village was large. And actually the problem is that when we intervened, it was a Saturday night and we ended up at a core hotel, like I was saying, the place where they party and everything. So there were 4 of us on one side, 4 on the other. You see, we were 8. And actually in front of us at one point, there were more than 200 of them, you know. So we thought, well, we can't apprehend them at that moment because we could see there were a lot of prostitutes, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. For safety reasons, it wasn't possible. So we decided to let them spend the night. So we watched them all night and we kept an eye on the people we were interested in, you know, like the bosses of the place. We tried to figure out who they were, like the pimps, for example. For example, you see people coming to the bar to buy beers or similar items. You see the gold exchanges and who collects the gold, so you know it's him. It's similar with the pimp, since the girls are in booths. It's really just tarps, simply with a mattress placed on wooden planks. And it's about 2 meters deep by 1.5 meters wide, with a garden hose, with water from the river behind to wash up between each client, you see. It's pretty basic, not luxurious. Before visiting the girl, the garimperos see a guy, give him some gold, and that's it. So we spot all that, you know. We're used to it, we spot them, and we know those are the ones we need to apprehend, you see. The garimperos, honestly, we don't really care about them, you know. So we strike, we launch the assault early in the morning, and we apprehend them. Everything is written in my book, so...
That's interesting, thank you. How do you find a hideout like that in the jungle?
Regular aerial surveys are conducted in the work areas by the military, police, or the National Forestry Office. They fly over and identify unregistered sites. So then, depending on the size of the site, missions are scheduled to intervene. Another way to spot a site is during our missions when we're called to intervene. Sometimes our area covers half of French Guiana, so we fly over various regions. So we have identified sites, and we fly over to see if we don't come across a site that isn't in the area. There's also a pretty effective method, since they're going to extract the gold. Actually, they use pumps to suck up the water and discharge it in certain places, so it creates placer deposits. That's what we call them, so it looks like sieves. And actually, since gold is heavier, the mud will flow away and the gold will stay at the bottom. And at the bottom, they put carpets, right? So the gold gets trapped in these carpets. Every week or every 3 days, depending on the site, they clean the carpets to extract gold. They use mercury for this because it acts like a magnet for gold. The different metals will clump together with the mercury, right? It forms a big lump, and then they heat this mixture to 700 degrees. All the heavy metals will evaporate and only the gold will be left, all right? But of course, all this sludge, when they filter it and everything afterwards, it's going to be dumped back into the river that flows through the watercourse they've sucked up. And actually, of course, it's going to flow into the watercourse until it reaches, if it's a small river, into a bigger river or into a main river. This sludge, actually, it will color the river. We call it the Ricard color. It makes a dark yellow. And when you fly over, you can clearly see the flow. For example, when you fly over a river, you might notice a smaller river or creek joining it. The water colors are different, letting you trace the watercourse back to its source. There are various methods for this. Their living areas are well hidden under the forest canopy, making them very hard to spot. We usually find them only at the last moment when we arrive, or during infiltration missions, like I talk about in my book. It's the nighttime zone, where actually we discovered it by chance, so to speak. They didn't think we were there because I used a technique. As I say in my book, it's a specific technique for infiltrating, so they wouldn't know we were there. That way we could catch them in the act, since if they knew we were there, they wouldn't have partied or been there and we wouldn't have detected anything. They would have hidden silently and the quad wouldn't have come out.
Has it ever happened to you that you managed to, I don't know, maybe capture people, then you bring them back to interrogate them? How does that work?
Yes, when we see the garimperos, as I said, they're illegal and shouldn't be there. So normally, the legal framework requires us to extract them and bring them to the administrative detention center, which is located in GIGN. The problem is when you come across sites where there are 100, 200, or even 20 of them, you have to extract them by helicopter, like in the movie, Otherwise, it's just not possible to get them out. Sites are often 1.5 hours away by helicopter, making the round trip about 3 hours helicopter. Costs range from 5 to 10,000 euros per hour. Imagine the financial cost of removing undocumented migrants. It's impossible, so we leave them. On the other hand, when we come across site bosses, pimps, boatmen, people who have things to answer for, who are of interest to us as investigators, in those cases we bring them back and investigators in Cayenne, Kourou, or elsewhere handle them.
What are they like? What do they do when we apprehend them? Do they try to run away? Do they give up?
They fight back and never surrender. It always turns into a mess. That's not me. I've never seen anyone in the forest surrender just because they're told to stop. It's impossible. They're always escaping on a quad or canoe, never letting themselves get caught, and it always ends in a fight.
Has it ever happened to you, like on that last mission when things went wrong for someone on your team?
When I arrived in 2008 or 2009, the same thing happened during a canoe interception. It was my unit, and unusually, it happened in broad daylight. But actually, it was really close to the Oiapoque, close to the sea too, so really on the Brazilian side and near the ocean. And actually, they had spotted 2 canoes. The river, you have to imagine, it's what we call the Proyeg. It's called the Proyeg, this river. And it's just before the other river, the Oiapoque. So actually, it's kind of in the middle of Guyana, you see? And it flows into the ocean. And the Brazilians, they go up, actually, they leave from Brazil, they go down the Oiapoque River, pass through the ocean, and then they go up this river. The Proyeg is used to supply the higher sites in Guyana. Okay, I don't know if you can see the route. This river, the Proyeg at its mouth, when it flows into the ocean, it's about, I think it's 7 or 9 kilometers wide. That should give you an idea of how big Guyana's rivers are. The mouth alone is 9 kilometers wide. In the middle of the day, my unit spots 2 distant canoes while in a jet-powered canoe and goes to investigate, unsure if they're illegal immigrants, fishermen, or someone else. And actually, when they get there, the guys obviously take off, so they start chasing them and manage to intercept one of the canoes. As I said, their technique is to get alongside, 2 guys jump in and apprehend them. When the other Brazilian canoe saw this, they turned around and came back. It went up onto the canoe where the 2 gendarmes were, the canoe that had just intercepted. Actually, it rammed into it and there were several exchanges of gunfire. The lucky thing for them was that the Brazilians' weapons jammed. And actually, one of my colleagues, of course, they had to return fire in self-defense. One of the Brazilian canoeists died. After that, they had to return to Regina with the corpse hidden in the canoe, stopping whenever people approached. They brought it back to the station, a safe place, but still had 2 hours left by canoe. So you have to imagine, people, even if they're handcuffed, it's still tense. So you see there are a lot of tense situations because of the isolation. When you're isolated somewhere, communication is often impossible since the satellite phone didn't always work, leaving you cut off from the world. For example, when we're dropped off by helicopter, it leaves to refuel, or like earlier, for example, he dropped me off and then he was supposed to come back to pick up some guys, but actually he couldn't because of the weather, the rain. So at that moment, the helicopter is supposed to pick you up, I don't know, in the evening at 6 o'clock. And then finally, because of the rain, it comes to get you 2 days later because the helicopter can't take off again. So you end up isolated very quickly, actually. That's the big danger, it's isolation. That's why we're trained to be really tough in Guyana, trained for that. We also run survival training for young people to teach self-sufficiency, since you can quickly end up alone.
That's it. Maybe a bit of a silly question, but how do you catch up to a pirogue? Do you have better engines than them? Or actually, how do you manage to do it?
We have the engines, like I was telling you, that we seize, actually. So they're their engines, so we use them. That's it, so we use them. Why do we do that? Because first of all, it's cheaper for France, of course. And also it's equipment they use, so we know it's reliable. If we bought other engines, they wouldn't necessarily be reliable since equipment in Guyana wears out very quickly because of the climate conditions, the humidity, the heat, and all that. So we need equipment that has proven itself in the forest. If the Brazilians use it, the equipment must be reliable for these conditions.
But then how do you manage to intercept them if...
Well, it's with canoes. Either our jets, they were jets, I don't remember the brand. But anyway, they were things with 200 or 240 horsepower, so they were really powerful. And our canoe engines, it's the same. They're engines from 75 to 200, 225 horsepower that are on the canoes. And they're makeshift things because an engine of 200, 225 horsepower is normally on a boat with a steering wheel, you know? Here, the Brazilians, they weld a handle, actually. It's on a tiller arm like that, you see. So you have a seat and a 200, 225 horsepower engine. I can tell you, it pushes hard, it really pushes hard. Because the canoes aren't very heavy. If empty, the canoe weighs 500 to 600 kilos. Aluminum canoes are lighter than wooden ones. Often, when you're empty with an aluminum canoe, as I said, that's why the canoe's front, or banana, goes over the dams. It's 3 meters above the water, with just the engine touching, and it's the same. We're the only ones with canoes since the mobile police can't use engines over 40 horsepower. And the soldiers, they don't paddle their own canoes themselves. They take civilians, locals actually, who are employed by the army to paddle for them. We can't risk exposing a civilian during canoe interceptions or put them in danger. And also, since they're locals, often, they leak information, so we don't work with them.
Has it happened to you often, like you mentioned, for example, a death, someone who passed away? Does that kind of thing happen often, or not necessarily, or generally?
Like I said, we often have weapons, but again, for us, if you want, unlike the soldiers who work on overseas operations, they on their side have enemies, and those enemies, they have to destroy them. For us, we have opponents, and those opponents, we just have to subdue them. So every time we use weapons, we try to, only in true self-defense, when there's no other option, do we act. Otherwise, we use many intermediate force options, like in mainland France. I know the 40mm, it worked on the yellow vests, but on the garimperos, it doesn't work at all. They don't care. On the contrary, it leaves a mark and they're proud of it. But we have a lot of rubber bullets, a lot of specific grenades as well for, how can I put it? It puts them in a bit of a chaotic state, and for us, it gives us that little window of 1 or 2 seconds to get close to them.
Okay, got it. So it's not just stuff to knock them out or to...
Yeah, exactly, because our goal is to apprehend them safely, for them and for us, and it's not to kill them, you know? I mean, there have been times when weapons were used, we didn't have any other choice, you know? Obviously, if the guy shoots at you, you have no choice but to fight back for your own safety or the safety of those around you, including other garimperos.
It's risky, because even if you don't want to hurt them, they'll still shoot at you if they can.
That's why, if you really run into the gang leaders, people won't let themselves be caught. Because, for example, in the case I was telling you about, it's actually because in the canoe they had just caught, there were 5 kilos of gold. They were never found because during the arrest, they tossed the bag into the water. The spot near the river mouth isn't very deep, but has several meters of mud. Nearly 20 years later, the 5 kilos of gold remain at the bottom.
There are a lot of people, after this video, they're going to...
You have to manage to find it.
Have you worked with the Foreign Legion? I believe the book mentions it.
Yeah, in the book, it's a mission with the Legionnaires. People think that missions in the forest are mostly military and Legionnaires. So that's also why I wrote the book, precisely to show them that we, the gendarmes, do a lot of missions in the gendarmerie, more than the military and the legionnaires. We work with them, but they're not allowed to work without us. A gendarme is always needed for judicial police work, but we gendarmes can operate without the military. That's the main difference. Legionnaires are excellent at survival, tracking, and similar skills. Actually, when we arrive on site, we do the Centre d'Entraînement en Forêt Équatoriale, which is the toughest training course in terms of roughness and conditions for the French army, and it's run by the Legionnaires. In Guyana, it's the training course in the equatorial forest. It's really a toughening up course where you spend several days in the forest. They drop you in the middle of nowhere, and you have to manage to find food and water on your own. Basically, that's what it is. So basically, you have nothing. It's real survival, so there are techniques and everything, and you learn that to be self-sufficient in the forest. So we do this course, and then indeed we work with legionnaires on a mission. I'm telling this story because it was a mission where we arrested Garimperos at night. There were 3 of us from my unit. Alain, whom I want to honor, returned to the mainland and passed away in 2016 at the Groupe d'Intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale branch in Guyana. And he died during a standoff. That's also why I mentioned it. A standoff is when a guy barricades himself at home. He used his weapon and killed my friend, and he took a bullet and died. So I think in the book I pay tribute as well. And on this mission, I was with him and another guy, and actually with the legionnaires, they were accompanying us. And actually we apprehended on the site, and it was a living area where there were several cabins in a row, so it was at night. And actually we apprehended the guys, the Garimperos, in their hammocks. They were sleeping one by one, that's how it went. So gradually we apprehended everyone.
Without the others waking up?
Each time we succeeded, we could see them. We had the IEL, it was raining, so it covered the noise, it was good, and we were really being very discreet. And every time we apprehended someone, we could see them in their hammock because they sleep in hammocks. They don't have beds in the forest. Actually, it was nighttime, they couldn't see, so maybe they heard a bit of noise or felt a presence. In fact, we would come up with a hand over their mouth, and that's how we did all the cabins to apprehend everyone. And on the site, it was a place with a lot of equipment, and we had done a good assessment.
How many are on your team during operations?
From my unit, there were only 3 of us on this mission because we were with legionnaires, and for the legionnaires, a combat group is the same. It's 12 to 15 guys.
Okay, yeah. How many do you arrest like that, with 15 or 18 of you in total?
At that point, it was the end. I don't remember exactly. We arrested at least 30 or 40 Brazilians, and then they were evacuated to Cayenne, so we had to make trips back and forth by helicopter. It was a mess.
How do you manage to control 30 or 40 people like that?
You apprehend them and use the Sarflex. In this mission, as I detail in the book, after each apprehension, we formed a line. The legionnaires stayed behind because they lacked the IL and couldn't see the vision. They followed us unexpectedly. This wasn't part of the mission plan. With my buddy and the IEL, we caught all the guys and left 1 or 2 legionnaires to guard them each time. As we advanced, fewer people remained since they were assigned to guard duty. By the last cabins, only my buddy and I were left to apprehend the final Brazilians. We found this village by chance at night and did a recon first. I set up the operation, but honestly, we had no idea how many people were inside. There could have been 3 Brazilians or 200. So as you leave some behind, it's not easy.
And what kind of risk do those guys face? Like the 30 guys you arrested, do they risk?
Well, they were taken to Cayenne, to the detention center afterwards. So after that, if they're questioned, if they're not known to the investigation, they're foreigners in a normal situation, so they're deported to Brazil. Yes, that's it. And if ever, on the other hand, they are known for other offenses, then they are questioned by the investigators. That's the investigator's job after that.
Isn't there anyone who tries to run, for example, into the forest or something?
Yes, always. When you arrive, they try, but since we caught them in their hammock, they didn't. It was just with the last hammocks, since we were both there when I arrived. There was a girl, a woman, who started screaming. You see, she screamed, so I put my hand over her mouth and I was ready to knock her out. And then actually I looked closer and saw she was an old lady. I still have a bit of humanity, so I said, shh, police, police. You see, with Arbet right in front, who was about 5 meters away, they heard the noise. Actually, they saw the people, but they ran off. So 1 or 2 managed to run away to get out, but otherwise we caught almost everyone. There were only 1 or 2 who managed to escape. But well, after that, it wasn't a big deal.
What do you find after stopping at a site like that?
So once you're there, as I mentioned, you have all the carbels for living, hammocks, all the equipment, and hidden spots for storing equipment. It's buried underground, so they use shovels and pickaxes to dig out the cables. The area is about 4 or 5 square meters, filled with equipment. If anyone finds out we're there, they cover it with boards and pull dead trees over it. You can walk right by without noticing it. And there, of course, since they didn't know we were there, the hiding places were open, so we found everything, and they had some crazy equipment. It's equipment used to extract gold, like engines. A lot of fuel, a lot of pipes, all the equipment used to extract gold, and also all the equipment necessary for living. So it ranges from rice to beer to coke to whiskey to toothpaste to soap, basically everything you can imagine. Actually, they live on site, so everything we have, they have too. It's the same. There are supermarkets over there. And then we also get mercury. And the thing about mercury, the first time you get it, mercury is gray. You know, everyone knows mercury. To transport or store it, they put it in bottles, little 50 centiliter Coke bottles. So often it's half full, so you see a 50 centiliter Coke bottle. When it's half full, you pick it up, you lift it like this, you see? Mercury is so dense that when you pick it up like this, it's got a density of 13, I think. So actually, a 50 centiliter Coke bottle, if it's filled with mercury, it weighs 7 kilos, 6 or 7 kilos. So the first time you see a bottle like that, you grab it and think, what's the deal with this thing? Is it stuck or something? And gold is even denser, that's why it all amalgamates like that.
Your book is titled For 23 Grains of Gold. if I'm correct. Could you explain the meaning behind the title and what happened? There's also a chapter named My Ultimate Mission.
That's right. So 23 grains of gold. It's because actually on my ultimate mission that I talk about, we were called into a similar site with soldiers. So it was a mission, a big mission with a lot of people, a lot of soldiers. And often on these missions, since we arrive by helicopter, and here, these aren't the infiltration missions that I talk about in my book. We're dropped off several hours away on foot, but here we arrive at the site by helicopter.
You arrived directly on site?
And so what happens is that since helicopters make noise, everyone who has something to hide, the site bosses, the dealers, the pimps, basically all the guys from the factions, the gangs, when they hear the sound of helicopters, they take off, they leave on quads, they leave by canoe, or they run away. So when we arrive on site, we know we're only going to find the workers, if you will. But the goal of these missions is really to destroy the sites. So we stay at least a day or several days on site to really destroy the sites in order to stop the offense. On a mission, we did 3 or 4 a week, missions like that. It's our daily routine. So let's say we arrive, we land, we actually fly over in a helicopter, we land somewhere, and about 20 soldiers were initially deployed in the area. 5 of us were in a helicopter, and the helicopters would return to Marie-Par-Soulois for reinforcements. So there were going to be about 50 soldiers in total on site. So they drop us off. So the soldiers are in the work area, and they drop us off, us. Our helicopter dropped me right at the edge of the forest. To work on the living area, our goal was to secure the living area where they live. They drop us off, the helicopters don't land but hover in the air. When we work with people from my unit, we descend using a rope or by rappelling, meaning the helicopter drops us off higher and we go down along the rope. This lets us land during infiltration, but only we are authorized to do it. On this mission, we worked with Republican guards who acted like mobile gendarmes. Since they weren't authorized, the helicopters had to land near a clearing.
Isn't it too risky to land by helicopter like that?
No, because helicopters are always risky due to branches and trees. Brazilians often use this to prevent landings. They leave tree trunks or they put big wooden poles 5 or 6 meters high in the work area. Quite often, specifically so that helicopters can't land. That's why, for us with smooth rope, actually the helicopters stay 10 meters up. We throw down a rope, we go down along the rope, and we always have a chainsaw to cut through all these things so the helicopters can land, and then the helicopters drop us off. So we spot the place, the trail, to get to the living area. We start running, and 5 or 10 minutes later, we arrive at the living area. The living area is the place where they live in cabins, the huts I was talking about earlier, and actually we arrive there. So the living area is divided into 2 zones. A first zone with 4 or 5 cabins. It's beneath the vegetation. They cut down some trees to build huts, but keep the canopy above, so it's hidden from the sky, though there are fewer tree trunks in the middle. And they use the trunks to make walls, and then they use other trunks to make roofs, a framework and everything, and then they put tarps to make huts. They sleep and live inside, so when I get to this first area, I check. There's a guy who didn't get away, an old garimpero, an old worker. Old, you know? The problem is, at 40 years old, you'd think they're 60, because they're so worn out by life that it's not obvious. But anyway, I check him, he doesn't have anything on him, he has nothing to be blamed for, he has no weapons, he's not known. We usually know the gang leaders. The investigators give us their photos, so we recognize the wanted guys in our areas. There's a risk of important people being present, even if not on this mission. No, there wasn't anyone who was known, really big shots who were known to live in those areas, but then again, you never know when you arrive. Some of them move from site to site, so you never know. On this mission, we had no info about people being there. I checked him, found nothing, told him to leave, and started searching, since our goal was to look for anything related to weapons. First of all, communication devices too, radios, to break the radio and disconnect it so they can't communicate with another site, obviously. And anything that's gold, all the equipment used to extract gold, so we seize that first. And above all, secure the area. That means when you arrive at the carbels, the wall, the tarps on the sides, you take them down so you can see through if you want. I arrive, secure an area, search quickly, and tell the 3 guys behind me to stay put. Then a comrade and I move on to the next section. So, how can I put it? There were about 4 or 5 huts. It's about 10 meters by 10 meters. It's a pretty narrow area. There's a small path that goes into the forest, a little path about 20 meters long. It leads to another, more deforested area with more huts. In this second area, I see several carbels and a quad, which surprises me since quads are usually gone by the time helicopters arrive due to the noise. I go straight to it and see a young Brazilian guy, about 25 or 30, with bleached hair next to the quad. I approach him right away. He doesn't have time to run away. I apprehend him, I check him, and actually on his quad, he doesn't have time to run because he's busy tying a generator to the quad to get away, because he knows we're going to destroy it. They tried to grab equipment before leaving since everything's expensive in the forest. He tried to secure the generator but didn't have time because we arrived too quickly, so I checked him. This guy, he has a little bit of gold on him, a small vial of gold with some gold in it, a cell phone, but he doesn't have any weapons, nothing. His face isn't known. I tell him to leave, but he tries negotiating in Brazilian, saying, let me keep the quad and I'll give you the gold. I explain the gold isn't for me, it's confiscated and not for my use. So I tell him to get lost. I give him a tap on the back of the head. Come on, get out of here now. I keep searching, so I start up the quad too, since there are no keys for the quad, obviously, so I hotwire it. Because after that, a quad on a mission like this is useful, because with a quad you can move much faster, that's it. It's useful for us, it's good to have a quad, it lets us go much farther.
You can connect the wires like in movies to try to...
Yeah, but it's quick. Actually, on an Inman, these quads have 4 wires, so you just need to connect 3 and leave 1 aside. So you need to know the colors, but it's not hard, really easy to start. I start the quad and then I keep searching, and actually, after about 5 or 10 minutes, 10 minutes at most, I hear 2 gunshots behind me, so right away I get down on the ground, I protect myself. The quad is there are some tree trunks, so I get behind them. And actually I see that guy, the Brazilian I had checked earlier, he's in the middle of the village and he's shouting in Brazilian, saying he wants to get his quad back. Because I'm right next to him, he can't move forward, so I draw my weapon. I warn him to drop it, but I can't actually use my weapon. I can't shoot because he's already fired at us. Since he's threatening me, it's technically self-defense. He grabbed the other Brazilian, the old man, and used him as a human shield, so I couldn't fight back. That's why I gave warnings. I tell him to get out, I tell him to drop his weapon, to calm down, and actually, since he sees that I'm there, he can't come get his quad, so he decides to leave. So he backs up to the edge of the woods and lets go of the other Brazilian to get away. So at that moment, I can fight back, I shoot, and I'm not sure if I hit him. You see, with my other buddy, we decide to look for him because we saw the direction he ran off in, so we try to find him. The problem is the forest is so dense that the 2 of us can't work safely, it's just that dense. He could be hiding anywhere since he's armed, actually. I quickly realized that it's not possible with just the 2 of us, so I decide to take the quad and go get reinforcements from the soldiers who are in the work area, which is about 10 to 15 minutes away on foot at most. I use the quad to go faster so they can help us. With more people we can find him since we can't just leave him. Now he's a criminal because he shot at and threatened us. Also, we planned to stay several days, so we couldn't leave a shooter there. Since I fired back, I'm not sure if I hit him, he could be hurt. So, I take the quad and head back in the direction of the helicopters, where the soldiers are, and actually on the way. So I left the village. Now I'm deep in the forest on a narrow trail you can barely walk through, and you definitely can't go 80 kilometers an hour. There are roots everywhere, the paths are all messed up, and for us on the quads, to move forward we put on chains, because there's a lot of mud, like snow chains you see. So I'm not going very fast with the quad, and actually this Brazilian guy, he heard the sound of the quad, and actually he sets up an ambush for me. He comes out in front of me and immediately threatens me with his weapon. Well, he points his revolver at me. At that moment I took off with the quad. Actually, since the generator wasn't tied down, I threw it off, and in my head, when I see the guy coming at me with his weapon, threatening me, because I know he's going to shoot, I can see it in his eyes, I know he's going to shoot. I wonder why I removed the generator. I could have used it as cover and he would have hit it, but that's not really possible.
Were you protected at that time?
I only have my bulletproof vest, that's all, but it's a small vest, At that moment, I actually see him, he's about to shoot me, he's going to kill me before leaving with the quad. I try to grab my weapon. The problem is, since I'm sitting on the quad, I can't do it, so I jump off the quad, and the quad keeps moving forward a little bit, I'm telling you about it, but it all happens in a split second, it's super fast. I get off the quad, I jump off the quad, and just as I'm about to grab my weapon, I signal him with my arm to calm down, so he doesn't see me pulling out my weapon, trying to gain a split second. And actually, as I'm signaling him with my arm to calm down, I'm pulling out my weapon. As soon as I have it out, I point it as I take it out of the holster, and right away, I shoot before he can shoot. The problem is, we end up shooting each other at the same time. I hit him in the arm and hand, and he actually shoots me. And since my arm is raised, the bullet goes under my armpit, under the bulletproof vest. So at that moment, the bullet actually goes right through my body, piercing both my lungs and severing my spinal cord. So at that moment, I really collapse to the ground. Immediately, I fall to the ground next to the quad. The problem is that the Brazilian actually keeps coming toward me. I see him, because when I fell to the ground, I kept looking at him. I focused on the cylinder of his gun. There's a cylinder and you can see the holes. So I focused to see if there were any bullets left, if there were any cartridges left. And since I saw that he kept coming toward me, still yelling, threatening me with that look full of hate, actually I was lucky when I fell to the ground to keep hold of my gun. And actually, before he could shoot a second time, I shot and hit him in the trachea, here, just above the heart. And actually, he died right next to me. So at that moment, you see, I'm on the ground, the Brazilian guy. He died 2 meters away. I'm convinced that I'm going to die too. I'm convinced that I'm going to die as well. Actually, I don't want to die alone. I don't want to die in the middle of the forest, all alone, with the Brazilians next to me. I just want a friend to come and hold my hand while I'm dying, so I try to call for help. The problem is, no sound comes out actually because my lungs are punctured. I'm trying to call for help, but I can't. And I feel like my body, my legs are on one side and the rest of my body hasn't moved. Actually, I haven't moved, and above all, I feel like my body is cut in half. Honestly, it's a really strange feeling. So I'm convinced that I'm bleeding out and that I'm going to die in a few seconds. So since I still have some rounds left in my weapon, I'm going to fire into the air to let my buddies know where I am. And actually, so they're going to get there pretty quickly. So you have to imagine they're not running, they're coming because they heard gunshots, but they don't know what's going on. So they're moving forward carefully so they don't expose themselves.
Yes, that's it. They're all coming.
They approach and see me and another Brazilian on the ground. They check him and realize he's dead. And the one who comes toward me, actually, I tell him, well, one of them takes the quad to go to the soldiers to get reinforcements because they had a nurse and a doctor who came to give me first aid. And the guy who stays with me, I told him to tell my 3 boys I love them. At the time, they were 9 months, 4 and 7 years old. I wanted them to know I was thinking of them in my final moments. After that, the nurse gives me first aid. I'm evacuated to Cayenne, but the helicopter takes 4 hours to arrive. It's huge. I discuss this in my book. I'm evacuated to Cayenne, but they can't help much, so I'm sent to Val de Grace.
What are you thinking then? Do you believe it's over, or is there still hope?
At first, I'm convinced I'm going to die, and then, in the end, you realize that I always stayed conscious. I was never in a coma, nor did I ever lose consciousness, so I remember everything, even though with the morphine, you still forget a few things. But there you go. I detail everything. Everything is detailed in my book. Really, it's the whole evacuation, the difference in treatment between me, who was injured on duty, this police officer injured on duty, and the soldiers who are wounded in war. If they're injured in Afghanistan or Mali, a medical plane from mainland France with military doctors and nurses comes to get them, care for them, and bring them back, since they depend on the military health service. I didn't use the military health service. Police officers like me rely on Guyana's civilian system. It took 48 hours to evacuate me from Cayenne to Val de Grace for intensive care and surgery. By the time I arrived, it was nearly 3 days before my surgery. I was evacuated on a regular Air France flight on a stretcher in the back among the meal trays. Since my lungs were punctured and I needed a lot of oxygen, the doctor hadn't brought enough, so I ran out 2 hours before landing. And luckily I was the boss. My officer Steph had come with me. And with the flight attendants, they were able to quickly hook me up to the plane's oxygen tank so I could keep breathing during the flight. I almost died. The bullet didn't kill me, but I almost died during the flight, even though normally there would have been a military medical flight to pick me up, but that never happened.
So, just so people understand, actually, you don't get the same treatment as if you were...
No, we don't get equal treatment, even in recognition. For instance, as a military gendarme, I can't receive the Wounded Military Medal. Currently, I'm in conflict as a soldier. We take out a provident insurance, so there are specific insurances for the military that are made especially for them. It's the GPM for the CITE. And actually on my provident insurance contract, unlike other injured soldiers who got full permanent disability without assessment, I receive much less, first 6 times less, then 2.5 times less. I underwent a court-ordered assessment. The insurance company's doctor even brought a photo of me playing sports to downplay my disability. You know, just to say, look, he's doing sports, he's not really disabled. You see, it's really despicable. It's such a despicable thing. I won in court, and actually, they're so relentless with my case that they're appealing to the Supreme Court. And I found out about that through a letter I received in my mailbox. They didn't even have the decency to inform me, neither me nor my lawyer. You see, I'm convinced that because I'm a gendarme, they think I'm not really injured. I know some military guys. I met one on the train about 10 days ago. He told me he was injured overseas and lost a leg. It's sad, but isn't that better than paraplegia? I'd give all the gold in the world to have only lost a leg. Since I was injured here, it feels like my body is amputated below the armpits. You see, just to give you an idea, paraplegia is much more serious than an amputation, and yet I don't have the same rights, so I try to make people aware of that. So I make videos, I have a TikTok account, I make videos, and then I contacted the media to appear on national networks to raise awareness, so that people know that we, gendarmes, are military. When we're hurt at home, we're valued less than if injured abroad, even though it's just as noble. It's the same flag and uniform, but not the same recognition. Because we, gendarmes, depend on military regulations, and the military regulations are not designed for our status. Everything is made for war casualties, so for the military to be taken into account, to be recognized, it's completely legitimate. It's normal, but as gendarmes, we shouldn't be left out. That's not right.
Totally, yeah. I'm just coming back to the famous book title. In the end.
So, for 23 grams of gold, because actually when I first checked the Brazilian, he had a small vial of gold that I seized along with his cell phone. Later, the investigation found 23 grams of gold in that vial. For just 23 grams and a quad, he lost his life and I was left in a wheelchair. I still believe that, fortunately, I shot him, because otherwise he would have tried to escape, likely causing more injuries or deaths since he was extremely determined. He was known on site afterwards. According to the statements of the Brazilians there, he was known to be very violent. He was also the one who used the quad. Actually, he used it to go get drugs or equipment. As for this Brazilian, honestly, I never held a grudge against him. I never wanted to because I didn't know this guy or his life. He'd been there for months. That quad he wanted back was likely his work tool and how he made a living in the forest. And the fact that I seized it, actually he wouldn't be able to work anymore. He probably bought that quad on credit from bosses, from gang leaders, that's it. If he couldn't repay it, maybe he feared being killed over the quad. I didn't know his life, maybe I made up the story, still I can't. What he did was unfortunate, but I did my job. There was a death and a serious injury over a quad and some gold. He was buried in a mass grave in Cayenne since no family claimed him. We don't know where he came from, which is sad.
To end on a bit of a positive note, I saw you won the gold medal in handbike.
Yes, because it's crazy. It all started because, as I was telling you, I was a sports instructor before, and in my unit we did a lot of sports. So once I found myself in a wheelchair, I had to continue a sport that I liked, so I started handbiking. It's a bike I pedal with my arms while lying down. It has a chain and gear shifts like regular bikes, but since I can't use my legs, I use my arms instead. I participated in several competitions, including the Amicus Games, which Prince Harry established in London in 2014. I've participated in several editions, you see, and I've won several titles, several gold medals in handbike.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was nice.
Major, thank you so much. Also, let's remind everyone about your book for 23 grams of gold, released last year.
Yeah, it was released in November and is now on sale everywhere. Amazon, Fnac, Cultura.
Exactly, with Murrow Publishing too. We'll include the link in the first line of the description, along with your social media links. You also started on TikTok, right?
Yeah, everyone can find me under the name Franck Robin, so on Instagram or TikTok. And I made some funny videos where I tell stories about missions in short format, several anecdotes, so it's pretty fun. They're nice little videos.
Feel free to go check that out. Of course, we'll put it in the first line of the description. Thank you so much for taking part in this. This is already the end of this video. Just a reminder, if you want to watch another episode, you have 2 screens showing up now on your screen. This was Noah. Bye.